So, not great for the Carolina Panthers last night in Foxborough. Was the final score 17-3? We avoided the dreaded preseason shutout. Will Palaszczuk, Willie P style on Twitter, voice of Charlotte FC, but also postgame Carolina Panthers. So, your big takeaway from last night. I know we didn't have starters in. There were some players that figured to at least be part of the rotation. But what was your big takeaway from last night?
There were a couple of guys, particularly on defense, who distinguished themselves, Adam, but I think the big story coming into this one is that Carolina kind of tipped its hand before they even set on the field with how many people they put inactive for this contest. This game, and I think even Dave Canales committed so after it, he said, you know what, this game was for the rookies and the first-year guys. This was to try and determine what you can get out of spots 40 to 53 on their active roster and then the 15 you'd carry on the practice squad. This was not a game for your top 30, top 44. Maybe a couple of guys did, crack themselves and improve their position, like an Eku Leota on defense or the other Lamar Jackson. But in terms of, trying to find a third quarterback, I don't know if that exercise is complete yet. And I also think, too, when you look at the offensive line depth, the thing we learned is that it's about as razor thin as we thought it was. They're going to have to really rely on health at that position because, beyond a couple of the swing guys like a Yosh Nijman, who we still haven't seen yet this preseason, and Brady Christensen, there's not a lot behind those top five that you have currently. I think Cade Mays is maybe one who had a very uneven day. He had some good, but he also had some bad. But in terms of trying to find anybody outside of those top eight, it's going to be a struggle, at least at this point.
Yeah, plus I think they only had 7 healthy offensive linemen to start the game, so those guys, for the first preseason game, they had to be ready to go the distance. Was a DJ Johnson good enough to at least say last year where he had a hard time getting on the field? Was there enough encouragement from DJ to think that, okay, maybe the third-round pick from a year ago does have something?
I think I put DJ Johnson in the same category, Adam, that I'd put Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall Jr. in that they've all had very good preseasons. It didn't really show itself out much in the game last night. DJ Johnson did have the one play where he was in on the quarterback. Didn't get credit for the sack, but he was at least, in the backfield a lot. I think the one thing positive that you saw the Panthers do yesterday was change the line of scrimmage on defense. I think that's something that really showed as a portion of progress. The unfortunate part about it is they got beat because of pursuit on screen passes and also on the run game. That's, I think, the one thing that I feel like Panther fans are going to have to kind of bite their lip through this season, and they had to last year, is that they're still probably going to give up a lot of yards on the ground unless some of the guys they brought in during the offseason, like A'Shawn Robinson and Jadeveon Clowney, are able to their form, be run stuffers, because this is the one thing with Ejiro Avero's scheme that they kind of are okay to take their lumps in the run game by also making sure that they prevent the big play. So I think it's something where you maybe saw a little bit of the previous form of this team with last year in terms of the way they played last night. Hopefully the infusion of the better players has them more adept to handle things like the run when the regular season starts.
See, that's my major issue with, theoretically the Panthers have this top 10 defense, and I think if you can run on a defense, you're kidding yourself if you think it's a top 10 defense. And I think they are very susceptible to the ground game. Look, I think A'Shawn Robinson can be great for them. I know how good Derek Brown is. And they obviously need a lot out of Shai Tuttle. But really, when you're playing a 3-4, you're also in some ways leaving yourself kind of susceptible to a run game, which means that your inside linebackers have to be serious run stuffers, so they need health and they need great performances out of those guys. But yeah, to me they're too easy to run on, and it's not encouraging if they're almost setting it up to be that way, and just trying to prevent the big play, because it doesn't take a lot, right? If you're giving up, 4 yards per carry, you're giving up a lot of first downs.
And that's where I think the Panthers will really have to pacify the loss of a guy like a Frankie Louvu, who I think is somebody who was everywhere. And again, I think Eku Leota very much helped his own cause yesterday. Again, I think he maybe projects a little bit more on the outside, but he's somebody who can kind of be a change-up piece in terms of a guy off the bench. Claude and Chairless is another one who has at least had, years in this league to at least go off of. But, until you see Shaq Thompson or Josie Jewell on the field, like you said, Adam, it's going to be very much a lab experiment because those are going to have to be your two run stuffers. I would sincerely doubt we see Shaq Thompson in the preseason at all, just because I think they want to make sure that they get him to the finish line, being week one fully healthy and everything to go. He hasn't had any setbacks, thankfully, during this portion of training camp, but they've had opportunities to try and be very conservative with him. I think the same can be said for J.C. Horn and a couple other those pieces that, quite frankly, discretion probably being the greater part of valor there.
Yeah, look, I have no problem with veterans not playing in the preseason. I still think, and this got me into some, I don't even know why, and I don't even know why I care. Not hot water, but a debate on Twitter about.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah,
I saw it.
Like, if Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, two of the best three quarterbacks in the National Football League, in my opinion, along with Lamar Jackson, but if those two guys are going to play a quarter in week one of the preseason, and they're both scheduled to play a full quarter this weekend, like, I think we can get some snaps for Bryce and the first-team offense against the Jets next week. Like, the Jets aren't going to play their starters on defense because they're going to use that joint practice because they're not going to risk injury to those studs. So you're going to go against the second-team Jets defense. So throw your first-team offense on the field, and let's just see it operate because, to be honest, and this is – I don't want to judge – harshly in week one, the operation didn't look great last night. There was still plenty of pre-snap penalties. They still looked like the timing was off on so many plays. So they got to get some sort of timing down in live action.
I had this conversation with our boss. I also had this conversation with the gentleman who you were sparring back and forth with on Twitter, our mutual friend Josh Graham.
Josh. I love Josh.
There is a dual paranoia that's involved when it comes to the NFL preseason. They don't want to get anybody hurt, and they don't want to show anything. And I almost feel like the way that this could be better for the fan, and again, I feel like that might be a little bit too self-serving for me, but the way that it'd be better for the fan is if the joint practices were more of the showcase event than actually trying to sit there and play an actual game. The problem you run into there is then you run the risk of that also being as watered down as the games have become. So that's the part of it that I feel like it's kind of like you're darned if you do, darned if you don't in terms of the way the league is. They want to get work done, but they don't want to do that at the expense of either losing a player or tipping their hand. Now, the reason that they are able to do this with joint practices is because they can control the atmosphere. They can tell the TV guys, hey, by the way, you're not able to shoot during the 11-on-11 and this and that nature. So I'm wondering if we have something that's similar to what the Panthers did with the Fan Fest, where you have a TV event, you make it a promotional outfit. You probably don't show as much as you would see in a game, but you make it an in-person experience where you sell tickets, you put it in the stadium, and even though you might not get the same gate when it comes to, with the season ticket holders, you, I think, get a better in-person experience and you get a better fan experience out of that than doing whatever the heck we've done over the course of the last couple of years where they've taken so much away from the enjoyment aspect of this and turned this into we just want to try to figure out what we're doing on the back end of our roster scenario.
It would be great, and we're talking with Will Palaszczuk at Willie P. Style on Twitter. It would be great if the NFL, as they continue to try to shrink the preseason and bloat the regular season because money, if they simply said, you know what, let's make the preseason for the little guy, slash ticket prices, throw it to charity. What a thing. The NFL makes so much freaking money. The last thing they need is to charge full price for the products that we're seeing. but that'll never happen. I don't even know why I brought it up. Let me one thing about the offense that we saw, and this is not about the operation, because all we had heard was, man, it's the best Terrace Marshall has looked. It's the best Jonathan Mingo has looked. And then back-to-back plays in the first quarter, second drive, whatever it was, drop pass. So how much of that is a setback for those guys, or because it was Jack Plummer, it doesn't really matter?
I think more of it is the fact that you didn't see them on the field for a lot of time. I think they released the snap counts about an hour ago, and I think both of those guys got somewhere in the area of less than 10 snaps apiece.
Right.
So I think, again, it's just a snapshot, unfortunately.
Literal
it's
snapshot.
Not going to help. It's not going to help them in the court of public opinion, like you said, because unlike people like me who get to see practice on a day in, day out basis, and quite frankly, of the wide receivers not named Deontay Johnson, Jonathan Mingo has been the best wide receiver the Panthers have had during the preseason, again, outside of the game itself. But I think that's something you look at and say you chalk it up to the fact that, hey, glad you got it out of the way in a game that means nothing as opposed to one that counts for everything. The TMJ one, I think, is a little bit more concerning because the wide receiver numbers are probably going to be the very hardest cut the Panthers are going to have to make, and a lot of it comes down to what they feel like the return game is going to look like. I think you're going to have to keep Amir Smith-Marset on this roster, or at least do returns, which takes away that spot. And then you have, I think, the top three very much in play. You have Johnson, you've got Thielen, and you've got Leggett, as well as what's happening with Mingo. You got those four basically set. Do you take Terrace Marshall Jr. as a sixth receiver? Do you want to have him on your active roster? And even other guys like Jalen Coker, Tompkins is somebody who they've liked also, who probably is more ticketed for the practice squad, but will have to be subject to waivers. That's going to be a very, very difficult cut, and TMJ needs anything he could possibly get to try and improve his position, and unfortunately it was a wasted opportunity for him last night.
All right, one more thing before we let at Willie P style scoot off into the ether, and that is your other day job, the play-by-play duties of Charlotte FC. What an unbelievably good, smart signing to get Tim Ream to leave Fulham after spending, 9 years at Craven Cottage? Absolutely awesome. He can still play. I mean, he wasn't first team anymore. He kind of had lost that spot for the Cottagers. But seriously, U.S. men's national team starter, the credibility he brings to a young back line.
It very much is a very good piece of business, Adam. To get him on a free transfer, too, I think is something you look at and say is helpful because of the way the MLS cap works. You have to apply some of the transfer fee to the cap, which could curb your ability to sign other players unless that's a DP, which, again, gets more into the weird MLS roster machinations. Right. But it does help you from a leadership standpoint. I think it also helps you just basically in the soccer community, because there isn't a soccer fan who doesn't know who Tim Ream is in this country. So I think that's something that puts more eyeballs on this club than they were getting. I think you get people, I don't know if necessarily you're going to have people who come to the gate, wanting to see Tim Ream, but I also think that at least it just shows, okay, they are ambitious and they're wanting to make things happen. Even with a back line that's one of the best in MLS, they were able to use that piece of business to not only fortify their locker room, fortify their roster, but help out two guys who are both young in this game.
Yeah.
Malanda and Privet are still both under the age of 25, and I think they are both ticketed for pretty prime careers. Malanda just re-upped on a brand new deal, as did Privet this year, so it's not indicative of how they feel about both those gentlemen. But one of the things that Dean Smith said at the beginning is that he likes having a left-footed center back to kind of change the balance and make sure everything is good. So I do expect Ream to slot in right away at the left side center back. It's probably going to feel really hard done on Privet if he's the one who gets replaced, but it also allows you in these final 9 games to kind of mix and match partnerships and keep those guys all fresh, because that's one thing you need when you get into this part of the season and the games start piling up and you get towards the playoffs.
No question. And by the way, Weston McKennie has fallen completely out of first-team favor at Juventus, so I don't know. Dean Smith should make a call. Let's get McKennie over here.
We can get everybody over here. We can get him. We can get Yunus Musa. We can make a time of it.
I'd love to see it. I love talking to you, sir. I appreciate your time. That's Will Palaszczuk. He is the voice of Charlotte FC post-game show for the Panthers on FNZ in Charlotte. I appreciate your time at Willie P. Style. We will do it again soon.
Always a pleasure, Adam. Thank you so much.